All right, so this is an interesting Zero Hedge article that's actually quoting your boy Martin Armstrong. You know, the guy with the economic confidence model, the ECM thingy tool he calls that he made, and the club wanted to get it from him, and he wouldn't give it to him, and they put him in jail. And by the way, James Comey was, I think, the DA at the time, early 2000s. I believe it was James Comey. Imagine that. But uh, maybe I should just click on his link instead of Zero Hedge. All the freaking ads and crap all over Zero Hedge. What he talks about, in essence, is that things are cyclical, and that um, global warming, there's nothing but a cycle. It's not man-made, nothing. It's a freaking cycle, and the cycle shows up in some of the weirdest places, such as boom and bust economic cycles due to the food production problems. It's like directly related. So I'm like, I like stuff like this. This is the kind of stuff that kind of fascinates me. The hunger stones have appeared, says, and I'll link you to his site here, ArmstrongEconomics.com. The hunger stones have appeared. I'm thinking, what the hell is that? I don't recall that one. And then I remember actually reading something about it a while ago after I started reading this, and I was like, I think I do remember that. When the water gets low enough for certain rivers and bodies of water, there's these stones that can be seen. And dangerously low water, like massive drought type of thing. So people would carve on there. And that's why they call them the hunger stones. Because when you see those stones again, you're fixing to go hungry, son. Of course, this is also during a period of time when we didn't have the kind of technology things we have these days. But it's still interesting nonetheless. Hold on. Couldn't even pause it. Couldn't even get the pause button pressed. While the global warming fanatics are out in full force saying, see, the heat in Europe is caused by humans driving cars around, they continue to ignore history. The extreme heat in Europe this year is part of a cycle. And by the way, one of the first things I had to look at was Al Gore's video, An Inconvenient Truth, and I believed it at first. Wow, he should have been the president, I kept telling myself. Damn that Bush. He should have been the president. Nope. He was lying to us too. He's part of the club. They want to get their carbon credits issued so they can make billions of dollars. And all of us have to pay the carbon credit fees. And the businesses do. And if the businesses do, they raise prices on things which you and I have to pay for. So we end up paying for it one way or the other. But I remember coming across this video where this scientist said, look, the period of global warming, that's the whole scientific community agrees upon that this is the time period. All the planets in our solar system, we're heating up too. That was the single most profound thing that just got me. Everything else that I'd read up to that point, which I was finding little pieces of things that says, I don't believe Al Gore anymore. Wow, I think he's lying to me. But then when I got to that piece, it was a documentary. I couldn't even tell you what it is now. It was so long ago. I'm like, wow. And how is he backing this up? Satellite data. We knew the temperatures of all the planets. And some of them, I think, were over 20 to 30% hotter for their global warming. Could you imagine Earth getting 20 to 30% hotter? We would be in deep, deep trouble. I mean, we'd be like dead. Things wouldn't grow, you know what I mean? Yet other planets experience that. We aren't living on those planets. How the hell did they do that, right? That was the thing that just took me over the edge. I no longer believe in this man-made global warming stuff. It's garbage to me. So the extreme heat in Europe this year is part of a cycle. The swings from extreme heat to extreme cold are also not unheard of. Another piece of historical evidence they ignore is known as the hunger stones, which there's a picture. I'm not going to show it to you. Pictured here is a hunger stone from the year 1616, which has been exposed by the low level of water in the Elbe River. This is at Diesen. if I'm pronouncing that right, Decin, Decin, in the Czech Republic. Throughout the centuries, there have been these cycles of extreme heat followed by extreme cold. Such events have been recorded when drought has resulted in the low level of water in the Elbe River. This year's drought in Europe has exposed once again the hunger stones. You ever seen the movie The Hunger Games? I think we need to stay. Hey Joe, my buddy Joe, the movie guy. Joe, let's start a new movie, buddy. It's called The Hunger Stones. You get hungry, you're starving, you throw a stone at someone because you're mad. This year's drought in Europe has exposed once again the hunger stones that have been used for centuries to commemorate historic droughts, which warn of their consequences when you see these stones again. The hunger stones are visible in the Elbe River once more. Or is that Ilbe? E-L-B-E. Or is it Elbe? Or Elbe? I don't know. I'm going with Elbe because it reminds me like Elmo. Just Elbe. This is a major river which begins in the Czech Republic and flows through Germany. There are more than a dozen hunger stones that serve as records of previous droughts, establishing that the extreme heat and drought of this year is by no means unique to history. And again, that one had 1616 on it. Pretty darn sure we weren't causing man-made global warming back then. Nonsense. The various hunger stones record droughts that resulted in famine and soaring food prices. The droughts that have been recorded on the stones, again, we now have global trade and global importing and exporting where we can get food across the planet in a hurry. So I'm not going to sit here and say that I think we're in deep trouble. But this is, again, an interesting statistic to know. And again, it also dispels this whole myth of man-made global warming nonsense. The droughts have been recorded on the stones to date 1470, 1616, 1707, 1746, 1790, 1800, 1811, 1830, 1842, 1868, 1892, and 1893, which, as you notice, those are two back-to-back years, which covers a period of 476 years. This produces an average of 39.6 years. Just applying that average would bring you to 2012. However, we have to look closer. Note that 2 years, 1892 and 1893, are back-to-back. This does not reflect two separate droughts, but the peak in intensity. Instead of there being two separate droughts, it is the same, just it's been extended by 1 year. That means there were really 11 events, not 12, within this 476-year span of history, and lo and behold, this alters the average to 43.27 years. This actually conforms to our economic confidence model frequency of 8.6 years divided by 2 equals 4.3. In fact, there is additional evidence that is being ignored by the global warming crowd, who seem intent upon leading society to its doom by ignoring the past entirely. Extensive research has also been done on tree rings in North Central Europe. This study has discovered that there has been a pattern of mega droughts in the 15th through 19th centuries. They classified 1893 as the Great Drought of 1893, where rainfall declined between 30 to 90% throughout various regions in Europe. They also found that the Irish famine of 1740 to 1741 was the result of a cooling period they pointed out resulted in unusually low winter and spring temperatures in 1740. That produced crop failures and a massive subsequent famine. They point out that there were 5 major mega droughts that took place in 1540, 1590, 1616, 1718, and 1719. Once again, we see back-to-back events, 1718 and 19, which in our analysis reflect a buildup of intensity rather than 2 separate events. Reducing this to 4 events, once again, gives us an average of 44.75 years, which is very close to the pi frequency. If we plot this series out, we arrive at the year 2020. It appears that instead of a back-to-back events in 2019, this can become the worst period of intensity and produce 3 years of drought in 2020. The greater the number of volcanoes erupting can also produce an increase in intensity for this period. What we must be concerned about is volcanic activity appearing in the West Indies, which includes Soufriere, whatever that is, on St. Vincent. On St. Vincent? Okay. It is the stratovolcano type event that can change the weather. These are volcanoes that are known as a composite volcano, which is a conical volcano built up by many layers or strata of hardened lava, tephra, pumice, and ash. When they erupt, this sends a tremendous amount of material into the atmosphere, which reduces sunlight and cools the temperatures. When we ran the drought data through our models, not only did it correlate with the economic confidence model, or ECM, it also coordinated with the first historic eruption of the volcano, which took place in 1718, and a subsequent eruption in 1812. Now look at the drought records of megadroughts, 1718 and 1719. When we ran the model, out comes the year 1816, which is known as the year without a summer. The climate turned extremely cold, and it was snowing in July in New York City. This resulted in major food shortages across the northern hemisphere. Note that the second eruption was 1812. When we correlated this entire period, what emerged was a dramatic increase in volcanic activity, which also correlated with the decline in the energy output of the sun. Our model warned that volcanic activity would rise beginning here in 2018, correlated with a decline in the energy output of the sun, which should have begun in 2015. Note that the hunger stones also mark the year 1811. While this is 1 year prior to the eruption in the West Indies in 1812, there is what has been called the 1808 to 1809 mystery volcanic eruption, which seems to have set in motion a mini ice age during the early 1800s. This was a monumental volcanic eruption in the VEI 6 range, which appears to have taken place in late 1808. This event preceded the 1815 eruption of Mount Tambora, which is a VEI 7 range, which produced a year without a summer in 1816. There was the period climatologists call the Little Ice Age. They believe took place starting around 1650. And by the way, as I read this, the thoughts come into my mind. Some of y'all are like, Joe, Florida, man, you know, coastal events, and I'm thinking, no snow, no super cold weather. If a bad thing happens elsewhere and it gets bad winter cold, I don't have to deal with that. It might be one of those years where like, oh, northern Florida got some snow. That's about it. And then it melted so fast you couldn't even see it. I think I like Florida. And again, my dreams and thoughts of crypto profits and what am I going to do with some of that, money, that profit? When we get our next house, my mom, Joe, you're moving in less than 2 years, up to 2 years from now, which theoretically could put us right before 2020, because we got this 2017 September-ish time frame. So 17, 18, 19, almost 2020, according to my mama Snip 4. But she's not always right with her timing either, by the way. But the point of me telling you this is when we do find that house, I'm convinced, and it might still be right here in Florida, but it's going to have more land than I have now, because I got a feeling some family, friends, whatever, we're going to be needing a little spot for everybody. And I want to get a flipping greenhouse, fully enclosed, fully air conditioned, year-round climate, like a boss. And that's what you should do too. It doesn't have to be a big greenhouse, by the way. You can do stacker pot, where you put these 4 or 5 pots on top of each other, and then they have holes in the bottom of each pot, and they drip down to the next one. Hydroponic gardening. I did one at the old house, the original house I had. You can't grow year-round in Florida. It's too damn hot. But you can grow, a lot of times through winter, but I don't know if I should say a lot of times, but sometimes through winter, definitely in spring, and a little bit in the fall sometimes, but not. Usually it's just like winter and spring for the most part here. But again, if you can control the climate, just keep it like in the 80s year round, or mid 80s, low 80s. Oh man. And my buddy Bill has been, which I mentioned this, said, Joe, these guys, they'll come out and they dig and run like 100 foot or something of one or two different pipes, like corrugated pipe, plastic stuff, whatever. You got to bury it like 5 to 6 feet deep, because at that depth the earth stays a constant like 60 degrees or so worth of air coming out of that tube. So you don't actually need an AC unit to run that needs Freon and all that crap, and a compressor to go using up electricity. But you just need a fan, which uses a tiny bit of electricity to just circulate the air through those pipes. But you also need some space to dig out this nice U shape, a decent path, so that all that pipe can get the temperature affecting it. You can't do a little short run, or else you're not going to circulate enough cold air. It'll be too short of a run. So those are thoughts like, I want to do that. How about, can you imagine having like a damn indoor, whatever you want to call it, not necessarily indoor, but I can't think of this. I just lost the stupid name of it. Greenhouse. Climate controlled. You got fruit trees, berries, watermelons, all your lettuces. Like, you could do stacker pots for a lot of that stuff. We did 3 heads of lettuce, I remember. And while we're picking leaves off and making our own salads for dinner, like, I go out there the next day, I'm like, why does this not even look like we took any lettuce leaves out of here? Let me grab some more. We're going to make another salad. And the same just keeps growing back. So just imagine having that. Stuff like this doesn't affect you anymore. We're always so reliant on everything, grocery store and gas stations. Like, I'm trying to set my life up, honestly, to where I'm less reliant. And yes, I'd like to have solar panels and all that stuff in my next house, which I've got them sitting in my freaking garage, not being used yet. Yes, I'll be getting an electric car again at some point. I do love my Tahoe, by the way, but imagine electric car, off the grid, electricity, solar. What do you pay for? What are you paying for? You got septic, well, so you don't have a water bill. Electric, got that covered. Driving a car around, free basically, as far as gas goes, because you're charging it with the solar and everything else, right? But it takes a little bit of land to have room for all this stuff. So I'm telling you, when the profits for cryptos really come in, I've been patient this whole time. I told you I got a fuse a mile long. All these ups and downs, I'm waiting. I don't care. I don't care. Hey, Blood Red, everyone else doesn't want to do a video today. It's because they're sick to their stomach. I'm coming out, smile on my face, guys. Fire sale. Theta 6 cents. Digibyte back down to 2.1, 2.2. God, what else do we got over here? Snippy's going shopping, son. And look how they've turned around. Even at those bottoms. I mean, if you would have got in right then, and that was like your first time getting in, oh my God, would you be happy right now? Joe, I'm up 50%, I'm up, I get it. But those of us who didn't get in those exact moves, we're waiting patiently for the big payday. That's all that's going to matter anyways. So, anyways, got off on a little bit of a thing there, but I felt like it was worth saying. There was the period climatologists call the Little Ice Age. They believe took place starting around 1650. This was the result of primarily the decline in the energy output of the sun, reflected in the drastic decline in sunspot activity. What we are looking at here is a drastic correction in market terminology, which took place during the early 1800s. A study of Greenland and Antarctic ice cores in the 1990s revealed evidence that pointed to a massive volcanic eruption that had occurred in early 1809. The problem that everyone faced was there were no human records of such an event. This meant that it must have been in a region where humans did not record the event. Additional research revealed from tree ring data that there was also a major eruption in 1808. So that's 1809 and 1808. Now 2 independent resources were pointing to a mystery eruption. But where? The mystery was simply that such a catastrophic eruption of the magnitude should have been noticed by someone. They began to scour the records around the world, hoping that someone somewhere recorded the event. Finally, In 2014, a PhD student, Alvaro Guevara Murua, and Dr. Carolyn Williams of the University of Bristol discovered an account of atmospheric events consistent with such an event by Colombian scientist Francisco. Well, that's fun to say, like Elf says, Francisco. Jose de Caldas, who recorded a massive transparent cloud that obstructed the sunlight at Bogota, Colombia in early 1809. Further investigation revealed that the cloud was first observed by him on December 11, 1808. De Caldas reported conditions consistent with a volcanic cloud that altered the weather during turning it unusually cold with even bitter frosts in Colombia. Still, further investigations to the south in Peru produced another observation by a physician named Hipólito of Lima. Combining these two observations led to the conclusion that the window of the eruption was sometime within 14 days of December 4th, 1808. The only area in the tropics to the west of Colombia and Peru with possible volcanoes was also located in the southwestern Pacific Ocean between Indonesia and Tonga. At the time, there was hardly any reporting coming from this region lacking European settlements. The Rabaul area has had such major VEI 6+ eruptions, but records only date back to the mid-1800s. However, this one catastrophic eruption is not the only volcano that erupted. This is why we have warned that the cyclical period for volcano eruptions turned up in 2018. In 1808, there were major additional eruptions in Urzelina, the Azores, during May 1st to the 4th, as well as the Taal volcano in the Philippines during March that year. There was also the Chilean Putana volcano, which had a major eruption during 1808 through 1810. Records are not precise, he says. This period is then followed by the truly massive 1815 eruption of Mount Tambora in the Dutch East Indies. This one is attributed with creating the year without a summer, because it was the largest eruption in at least 1,300 years that has been recorded. This event was followed by the 1814 eruption of Mayon in the Philippines, which appears to have contributed to the weather changes of cooling, creating an accumulative event. Our models have pinpointed yet another such period that perhaps sent human civilization into the Dark Ages. There was a similar period with volcanoes and extreme weather events of 535 to 536 AD. Researchers from Los Alamos Laboratory published a thesis. In this study, these researchers developed a model recreating a volcanic eruption of such proportion that it staggers the human mind. This eruption is known as the Proto-Krakatoa eruption. It occurred in the year 536 AD in the present-day country of Indonesia. This predecessor of the 1850 AD eruption of Krakatoa of the same name and place was many times greater. The evidence these scientists present is that this resulting blast of this supervolcano with its caldera or magma chamber collapsing beneath it formed the Strait of Sunda between the islands of Sumatra and Java. Before this explosive eruption, these two islands were one landmass. The bathymetry data indicates this caldera is about 40 to 60 kilometers in diameter. We do know that there was a major eruption on August 26, 1883 of the volcano Krakatoa, which was one of the most catastrophic ever witnessed and recorded in modern history. Previously, we knew of a more moderate eruption that took place back in 1680. This mystery eruption did leave behind contemporary historians who recorded events. Procopius wrote in 536 AD, quote, "During this year a most dread portent took place, for the sun gave forth its light without brightness, and it seemed exceedingly like the sun in eclipse, for the beams it shed were not clear." John the Lydian, or John Linus, was a 6th century Byzantine administrator and a historian who also wrote in 536 AD, the sun became dim for nearly the whole year, so that the fruits were killed at an unseasonable time. Now, see, yes, I know we have technology and all that stuff, but if an event like that happens, isn't most of planet Earth in trouble? And it would be times like that where you need a greenhouse, but you might argue, well, but the sun, Joe, the sun's not going to be shining through like it needs to. We have artificial light these days, right? We've got fluorescent lamps, now of course LED lamps, but there's all kinds of different grow lights you could use. Again, powered by what? Well, solar panel, but wait a minute. Solar panel, sun, not as bright as it should be. The question would be though, is it bright enough to at least power stuff? To get your thing situated? And is it still good enough, like when he talked about for nearly the whole year, so the fruits were killed at an unseasonable time. Does that mean because it was so cold outside? Not necessarily that the sun's not enough to charge up, solar panels and charge up your system. Maybe it was just, it's too cold, kind of a thing. But again, you got a greenhouse, and yes, if it gets really, really cold outside, you're still circulating that air at 60 degrees. So if it's 30 degrees outside or 20 degrees outside or whatever, you're circulating 60 degree temperature in there, which might make the whole thing 50 degrees. You follow me? Not enough to kill stuff, is it? Definitely not. So there's quite a bit. This is kind of a lengthy article here. I just want to scroll down because this is a very long article actually. Sodom and Gomorrah, which are most likely located at the Dead Sea, may have been destroyed by debris from a comet. Startling new archaeological and astronomical research suggests. The Dead Sea is famous for its extreme salinity, 34%. I just got an email in. Wow, Desiree nailed it. Talking about Desiree, 27th, 28th, time frame for cryptos. The Dead Sea is famous for its extreme salinity, 34% salt, or almost 10 times as salty as the ocean, and for having the lowest elevation on Earth. I'm just trying to see, but anyways, the final thing here. When all is said and done, we may be as insignificant as a pebble lying at the bottom of the ocean with no understanding of what lies above our heads. Nevertheless, the global warming crowd wants to tax us to fill their own pockets with endless billions of worthless research. We are left on our own to understand the real consequences, and that the hunger stones prove that this is not a unique event caused by CO2 and driving to work. Food prices will rise into the 2024 period. You should not simply just prepare for a commodity rally, but be wise and have some stashed away as a hedge. This is not the end of the world doom and gloom stuff. It is simply looking at cycles, and it will pass as it always has. Which is, again, why you should have a little food storage. Maybe it can get you by 1 year. On a tight budget where you lose a bunch of weight. I've got stuff I've told my wife the other day, like, we might need to throw some of this stuff out, like it's old. Some of that stuff's 12 years old now, 10 years old. And some of it will last longer, but, I'm just thinking out loud, like, maybe now's a good time to start stocking up. So you got some years ago. He's talking up to 2024, 2018. It might not be a bad idea to start stocking up on some foods, just in case. That's all. It's just insurance. Just like you got car insurance, homeowners insurance, and whatever. You got jabroni insurance. Get some food insurance. Oh, wait a minute. I have to copy that. So anyways, very interesting article. Totally worth doing a video on. Take care.